come on in. Warm welcome to all of you to Coral Gables Congregational Church. We are part of the United Church of Christ, and we welcome you, no matter who you are or where you are on your life journey. A very special welcome to our visitors and guests. We are so very honored by your presence today, and we do hope that following our service, all of you, family and friends alike, will join us in the fellowship hall for a time of informal conversation. I'm catching my breath. I forgot my announcement, so I ran back to my office. Informal conversation and some refreshments. We also want to say a warm welcome to those who are worshiping with us online this morning. They are as close as our neighborhood and as far away as around the world. So we are so delighted to have you worshiping with us as well. I'm going to ask now that everybody please sign in. There are red pads in the pews. If you would pick those up, sign in, let us know of your presence today. And while you're sending them around the pews and passing them back and forth, check the names of folks around you so you can greet each other by name during and following our service. We are so pleased this morning to welcome some very special guests. All weekend, we have had the marvelous Limper Lectures from Eden Theological Seminary. They have gathered here to speak about approaching other religions from a Christian perspective, and it has been absolutely amazing and enriching and empowering. So I'd like to introduce to you the lecturers who have been part of this series. We have Dr. Paul Knitter and his wife, Kathy. Paul is yes, I'll let you applaud. I will tell you that Paul is the Paul Tillich Professor of Theology, World Religion and Culture of the Union Theological Seminary in New York City. And then we have Dr. Damayanti Niles, who is, yes, the Professor of Constructive Theology at Eden Seminary. And our special guest preacher this morning, Dr. Dale Bishop. He is the former executive minister of the United Church of Christ Wider Church Ministries, and he has also served as Director of Resources and Relationships for Interfaith Understanding at Hartford Seminary. And from 1980 to 1999, when I knew him well, he was an area executive for the Middle East for the United Church of Christ Board for World Ministries. Most recently, he served as a local church pastor in Rhinelander, Wisconsin. So we are so delighted to have all of them here and to have Dale in our pulpit this morning. If any of you are still interested in attending the final lecture, a panel this afternoon, there are tickets still available. Just come to the chapel, and that begins at 12:30. Just a couple other really quick announcements. This Friday evening, we're going to try to do something that I think is going to be great fun, an intergenerational event on the green space across from the church here. We're going to do, remember the old drive-in movie things? We're going to bring in a big screen, and you're invited to bring lawn chairs and blankets. We have popcorn and some Raisinets for all of you. And we are going to gather and watch the movie Back to the Future. So come, young and old. We want you to come, bring your neighbors and friends, and I think we're going to have such a great time. I will also mention to you that we are in the midst of a hunger vigil, and my feet are on the ground at this very moment, but to bring an announcement about that, do we have someone who's going to say something? Thank you so much.
Good morning. Lori, catch your breath. Okay. Our hunger vigil kicked off with a great start last Sunday. We raised almost 3,000 pounds of food for Feeding South Florida, an organization dedicated to keeping the hungry fed throughout South Florida. Today's the last day for us to save Lori from the dreaded tower. And if today is anything like last week, we will have no problems keeping Lori on the ground, short of nailing her heels to the sanctuary up here. We will be continuing to collect food and monetary donations in the fellowship hall after the service, believing that we can fulfill our goal and make a huge difference in the lives of thousands of hungry people throughout our communities. Please help with whatever donations you can give after the service at our Hunger Vigil table in the fellowship hall. Each dollar counts as a pound of food, and Feeding South Florida provides 6 meals for every dollar donated. We've raised just over 8,000 pounds of food so far. But we haven't reached 10,000 pounds. So reach into your pockets, come on by, bring whatever heavy items of food you have. We could all use a little post-holiday diet. Bring it on over and let's keep Lori out of the tower.
Thank you. Thank you. Friends, rest of the announcements are in the bulletin. Please take a look and join us throughout the week and the weeks yet to come for any of our offerings. We gather on this Martin Luther King Jr. holiday weekend, remembering a dream, remembering the love that calls us together as a community, remembering the call to care for one another and to be united in justice and with peace. Let us gather now in a time of worship.
gather to worship God, who gives us with diversity and makes us for community,
who gives Jesus Christ to show us how to live,
who inspires children, youth, young adults, and people of all ages,
to seek justice, share power, and live together in love and equality,
who invites us to join the struggle for wholeness and well-being for all,
and whose presence, grace, and love sustain us in our living.
We gather to worship God.
To God be all glory, honor, and praise.
Saw God's new day.
Martin Luther King once said, "Love is the only force capable of transforming enemies into friends and strangers into family." Let us be so transformed as we extend Christian love to one another by saying, "The peace of Christ be with you."
As we gather back into a time of worship, I do want to remind you that we have 17 young people on a mission trip, or actually a retreat this weekend. And while we still have some young people here, there is Sunday school for all young people from middle school to high school. Let us be in worship once again.
Stand up for justice. Sometimes it gets hard, but it is always difficult to get out of Egypt. For the Red Sea always stands before you with discouraging dimensions. And even after you cross the Red Sea, you have to move through a wilderness with prodigious hilltops of evil and gigantic mountains of opposition. But I say to you, keep moving. Let nothing slow you up. Move on with dignity and honor and respectability. I realize that it will cause restless nights sometimes. It might cause losing a job. It will cause suffering and sacrifice. It might even cause physical death for some. But if physical death is the price that some must pay to free their children from a permanent life of psychological death, then nothing can be more Christian. Keep going today. Keep moving amid every obstacle. Keep moving amid every mountain of opposition. If you will do that with dignity, when the history books are written in the future, the historians will have to look back and say, there lived a great people, a people who injected new meaning into the veins of civilization, a people which stood up with dignity and honor and saved Western civilization in her darkest hour. A people that gave new integrity and a new dimension of love to our civilization. When that happens, the morning stars will sing together and the children of God will shout for joy.
There's a train a-coming. Don't need no baggage, just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesels humming. Don't need no ticket, just thank the Lord, yeah.
On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing, there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. He said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Friends, God is still speaking. Listen.
Good morning. 2 prefatory remarks. One is, I am pretty sure that I can speak, I'm never quite sure, but I'm pretty sure that I can speak for my colleagues. I know I can speak for my colleagues in extending our thanks to you for what has been for us a wonderful weekend. A weekend of great hospitality, wonderful discussions, and emerging friendships. So thank you. And the second thing I want to say is that Lori did not mention that she was my pastor in Cleveland. And so I know all too well what a daunting task it is to follow her to this pulpit. But I'll do my best. Will you pray with me? O God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. You are our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. After I left the flesh pots of Cleveland and moved to the frozen tundra of northern Wisconsin, I became a pastor. After years of working as a layperson in the overseas ministries of the national setting of our church, I received my degree from the School of Hard Knocks, otherwise known as Equivalent Experience, and was ordained into the Christian ministry and installed as a local church pastor. And there, at First Congregational United Church of Christ in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, I had to learn on the job some of the things that pastors do all the time, things I really hadn't thought about before, and things that I didn't feel particularly well qualified to do. And one of those things was premarital counseling for couples who were going to be married in our church. Our church was blessed with a wide center aisle, a fairly large nave for churches in northern Wisconsin, a world-class organ, and beautiful stained glass windows. We were a favorite choice of people who wanted to get married in church, but weren't really members of any local church. And while we were open to doing that, we required that everyone getting married in our church attend 3 premarital counseling sessions with the pastor who would be officiating at the wedding. That would be me. You could see it in the eyes of many people who sat through these sessions in my office that they really didn't want to be there. All of them were already living together, and most of them had been living together for some time. I'm sure that they wondered what I could tell them that they didn't already know about the challenges and joys of marriage, and truth be told, so did I. But we did our best. We did our compatibility exercises. We talked about the things that can cause tensions in a relationship: family, money, intimacy. And too often these people did their best to tell me the things that they thought I wanted to hear. In my more cynical moments, it seemed to me that for some couples, this whole process was a required obstacle on the obstacle course toward having a memorable wedding in a pretty church. But there were moments of insight and inspiration as well. I remember a couple who were discussing their wedding vows. They wanted the traditional vows, not something that they themselves would write, not even an updated version of the more familiar ones. But when we looked at that traditional wording, the bride-to-be burst into tears. When I asked what was going on, she replied that it was the "till death us do part" that had gotten to her. She had at that moment a flash of recognition that death is a part of any relationship, that at some point one member of this loving couple would be bereaved, would have to mourn the passing of the other. Death had, in a sense, entered the pastor's study, taken a seat, and joined the conversation, even as we were talking about a joyful occasion that we hoped would mark the official beginning of what would be a long and happy marriage. Well, even though it's not so obvious, death was also a part of the conversation at that wedding in Cana, where Jesus famously changed water into wine. It was there in Jesus' abrupt retort to his mother when she pointed out that the hosts of the wedding party had run out of wine. "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." This hour that had not yet come wasn't an hour when he could miraculously produce wine for people who either hadn't planned well or were blessed with friends who drank too much. It was Jesus' kairos moment, his crucial moment. Remember that the word crucial itself comes from the Latin word crux. I always do this to impress Paul Knitter with my Latin. Crux, which means cross. Jesus was already looking ahead to his own death. And death was there as well when Jesus told the servants to fill with water 6 huge jugs that were normally used for the water of purification, water that would cleanse the bodies of the deceased in preparation for burial. This changing of water into wine was not some kind of a party trick that Jesus used to impress his disciples and future followers. It was a foreshadowing of his own death and a foretaste, if you will, of his resurrection. Now, my colleagues and I have invaded your church this weekend to talk with each other and with you about interfaith relationships. When my former pastor, Lori, invited me to preach here this morning, I immediately turned to the lectionary to see what the readings for the day were. And when I discovered that we'd be reading this account of the wedding party in Cana from the 2nd chapter of the Gospel of John, it struck me that the deep imagery of the miracle or the sign of Cana might be appropriate both for the topic of our conversations this weekend and for our honoring in church today the living legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You see, I started to think about those large urns that were used for the waters of purification. It struck me that they were useful for their original purpose, but they were not adequate for the needs of the occasion. And that's how I'm beginning to think about the entity we're talking about, this nebulous entity that we call religion. Religion is something that we use to bring order to our understanding of the world. In fact, the very concept of religion, like the concept of race, is a product of the 18th and the 19th centuries, which was an era of colonialism. In order to rule over people, the colonialists needed to define them. They needed to name them. And so whole faith traditions and practices, with all their variety and diversity, were brought into neat categories that were convenient to the categorizers. If you can define people by race or religion or nationality, you can, in a sense, control them. Ours is an age when these categories, inherited from the past, are no longer useful. In fact, they never were really useful except to those who employed them. In fact, those categories into which we so easily assort human beings are not only inadequate, they can be downright destructive. We know about the destructive power of racism. And I think that we can say the same things about what I'm going to make up as a word, religionism. Let me illustrate what I'm trying to say with a little vignette from my experience when I was a Middle East executive for the United Church of Christ. A group of our staff and board members were visiting what used to be our mission in Turkey in the 1980s. At that time, we were still involved with 3 schools, a printing press, and we had about 20 missionaries in Turkey. Most of those missionaries were teachers in the schools that had been founded by their predecessor missionaries in the 19th century. But by the time we visited, most of the staff were Turks, and increasingly, the governance of the schools was done by local people, Turkish Muslims and secularists who were, for the most part, graduates of our schools. It was an extraordinary and precious experience of partnership and interfaith cooperation. Well, at the conclusion of our meetings, which included both the Turks and the Americans, we American Christians were going to have a worship service, which was to include the sacrament of Holy Communion. The Turks respectfully left so that we could do that, except for one Turkish man. When we began our worship service, he was still there. And then we started to wonder what he would do when communion was served. We all pretended not to be obvious in our observation of him, but I'm pretty sure that we all were looking at him, and we all noticed that he received the elements. After worship was concluded, one of our group approached him and said, "I didn't realize you were a Christian." He responded, "Is the label so important to you?" It turned out that this man had been part of a group of Turks in the city of Gaziantep who called themselves Jesusists. They considered themselves to be Muslim followers of Jesus, who, as I'm sure you know, is considered by Muslims to be a prophet. These Turks had resisted the term Christian because of its unpleasant historical associations in the Middle East, the Crusades and European colonialism. But there was something in the interaction between Turkish Muslims and American Christian missionaries that had led to an expansion of faith for both. Faith was not a defining and limiting factor. It had become broadening and expansive. The water of religion had become the wine of faith. We seem to be living in a time when the labels are indeed of supreme importance. Muslims are now routinely characterized by opportunistic and fear-mongering politicians as terrorists or people who have no respect for human life. And on the other side of the world, Christians are being labeled by nihilistic extremists as crusaders. In fact, Christians in the Middle East were among the first victims of the European Crusaders. Those soldiers of the cross considered Eastern Christianity to be not the right kind of Christianity, and so they slaughtered Orthodox Christians with the same zeal that drove them to kill Muslims and Jews. In our time, religionism is now in competition with nationalism as the most divisive and most destructive ism going. And I should add to that racism. I have read that geneticists who have studied people's DNA have concluded that there is as much DNA variety within presumed racial groups as there is between presumed racial groups. And I wonder if the same is also true of our religious DNA. I know that I have found kindred spirits, indeed a common faith, in people of other religious traditions, and that I have found myself profoundly at odds with adherents of my own Christian tradition. This is not to say that all faiths are relative, that it doesn't matter what you believe as long as you believe something, nor is it to say that all religions teach the same thing. They don't. We don't engage in interfaith relations because we expect to find that the other is an anonymous version of us. We do it because we want to discover something new, something that will both challenge us and deepen us. I know that my own faith has been broadened and deepened by the insights I've received from and by relationships I've experienced in the encounter with people of other religious traditions. I believe, I hope, that I've become a more thoughtful Christian because of those insights and relationships. This is not, for me, a matter of abstract academic speculation. This is personal testimony. To confuse a metaphor, I'm not talking about a watered-down version of Christianity. I'm talking about a deeper, more attentive and authentic Christianity. I'm talking about wine. When President Obama was elected, there was much talk in our country about the possibility of a post-racial society. That turned out to be somewhat of an illusion. Ferguson and Chicago and Cleveland and New York have shown us that in horrifying ways. But the fact that racism is still alive and sick in our society should not prevent us from trying to get beyond it. I'm wondering if we should also be longing and working for a post-religious society. What we need now is the transformation of the water and those sterile old vessels of purification, those vessels of a sterile religiosity, into the wine of faith in a God who's not limited by our labels of convenience, what we call the world's religions. In the Abrahamic family of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, which is a part of our interfaith encounter, we all say the same thing. We all say in Arabic, Allahu Akbar. In Latin, Deus semper maior. God is always greater. But we behave as if it is Christianity or Islam or Judaism that is greater. To borrow a Buddhist analogy, we focus on the finger that points to the moon rather than the moon to which our religious fingers should be pointing. That new wine that Jesus provided for the wedding guests, the wine that came from those old water vessels, was, said the wine steward, the best wine. You saved the best for last, he said. It's this wine of faith that can burst our old wineskins of ingrown religiosity, of increasingly meaningless labels. It's this wine that could just save us and free us to be more faithful followers of Jesus and seekers of God. Amen.
Over this past year, we have far from seeing the dream of Dr. King, from Ferguson to Baltimore, from New York to Cleveland. We know that labels still exist, and Dr. King's dream of judging people by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin is yet not a reality. And so let us again, once more, recommit ourselves to the dream of Dr. King that all people, regardless of who they are, may find justice and equality.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching till the day I die.
He came into our lives when the yearning of people to be free had turned their attention to injustice. For justice and only justice we shall follow, that we may live and inherit the land which the Lord our God gives us.
Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching till the day I die.
He set off with us on a journey for justice. It was a journey proclaiming words of the ancient prophet Amos. Let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like a mighty stream. It was a journey calling forth the modern Christian ministry to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, to set at liberty those who are oppressed.
Ain't gonna let oppression turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let oppression turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching till the day I die.
Martin Luther King Jr. envisioned the ultimate freedom, the freedom achieved in struggle, the freedom reached in brotherhood and sisterhood, the freedom fired by the dream of a man, the freedom inspired by the want of a people, the freedom free of hate, the freedom full of love.
Ain't gonna let no hatred turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let no hatred turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching till the day I die.
The journey went to Montgomery to affirm human dignity and courage, to Birmingham to defeat the sickness of segregating human society. To Selma, to ensure the voice of all people in human affairs. To 100 nameless communities, to remove painful shackles of oppression and to light joyous torches of liberty. And when war was encountered, the leader of this journey sang with the people, "Ain't gonna study war no more." He met violence with nonviolence and said, "Hate is too great a burden to bear."
Ain't gonna let violence turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let violence turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching till the day I die.
And even when death was confronted, as the journey reached Memphis, he could say in final triumph that in life he had found something worth dying for, something worth life itself, the promised land, a land of freedom with justice.
Ain't gonna let dying turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let dying turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching till the day I die.
So we are thankful that the Spirit of the Lord anointed a man who preached good news to the poor, who rejected segregation and embraced liberation, who prophesied the greatness of his people in struggle for the deliverance of all people.
Ain't gonna let nothing turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nothing turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching till the day I die.
God calls us to live faithfully and to invest our lives in the service of hope. God calls us also to live in the service of justice. God calls us to attend to the needs around us and to be generous in the service of compassion. In response to all the ways in which God blesses our lives and continues to offer the promise of life in communion with God, let us give thanks through the presentation of our tithes, pledges, and offerings. Will the ushers please come forward to receive this morning's gifts?
Let us turn our thoughts today to Martin Luther King and recognize that there are ties between us, all men and women living on the earth. Ties of hope and love, sister and brotherhood, that we are bound together in our midst. There is a hunger in the center of the chest. There is a passage through the darkness and the mist. And though the body sleeps, the heart will never rest. Shed a little light, oh Lord. Oh, now. Just a little light, oh Lord. Stand it on up. Stand it on up, oh Lord. Yeah, now. Won't you shed a little light, oh Lord. Can't get no light from another day. Don't see no light from the TV screen. No, no, no. When I open my eyes, I wanna drink life in from the well on the hill. There is a feeling like the clenching of a fist. There is a hunger in the center of the chest. There is a passage through the darkness and the mist. And though the body sleeps, shed a little light, oh Lord. Oh, we can see. Just a little light, oh Lord. Now, stand it on up. Oh Lord. Won't you shed a little light, oh Lord. Shed a little light, oh Lord. Shed a little light, oh Lord. Just a little light, oh Lord. Now, stand it on up. Yes, Lord. Won't you shed a little light? Shed a little light, oh Lord. Won't you shed a little light? Won't you shed a little light? This is light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine.
And together we dedicate these gifts. We believe that through our time, talent, and treasure, we believe we believe we believe we still believe
Overcome mean-heartedness with a kind word or good deed. Overcome war, poverty, hunger, and suffering throughout our urban streets and lands abroad by sharing the love of Jesus Christ with your neighbor.